Chosen ones, do you feel the shift? The ones who wronged you, who never sought forgiveness, are now drowning in regret as God holds them accountable. Are you ready to witness their remorse unfold as the weight of their actions finally comes crashing down upon them? You walked the path, every step heavy, every breath laced with judgment. The weight of others' scorn pressed down, not like mere glances, but like piercing daggers that tore at your spirit. The world felt narrowed, the air stifled, not because the day was dark, but because their eyes burned holes into you, marking your skin like invisible scars. They didn't need words to convey their disdain. Their silence was loud enough, pressing in on your chest until it felt like you were suffocating under its weight. You weren't just isolated, you were exiled, thrown into a realm of shadows where no one dared to reach out. Heads turned as you passed, not in acknowledgement, but in dismissal, as if your very existence offended them. Every insult, every mocking whisper, felt like it was branded onto your soul, leaving behind the taste of humiliation so bitter it clung to your tongue. You tried to stand tall, but your body betrayed you. Shoulders curled inward, neck stiffened, head tilted down, not out of choice, but because the world had left no other posture for you to adopt. But then something shifted, not for them, but within you. You began to notice their voices shaking behind the bravado, their masks slipping, revealing cracks beneath the surface. Their ridicule was a shield, not an attack, a desperate attempt to mask their own insecurities. They weren't laughing because you were weak. They were laughing because they feared your strength. In your lowest moments, you were forced to strip away all illusions, and that terrified them. They didn't offer you forgiveness because they had never been strong enough to seek it themselves. And now, their regret clings to them like a shroud, a silent, gnawing thing they can never shed. You, however, have walked through the fire and emerged unbroken. When you stood at the edge, fragile as glass ready to shatter, something beyond comprehension moved. It was not a gentle hand, but a force so overwhelming it shook the very ground beneath you. It wasn't kindness, it was the reckoning you didn't know you needed. This was intervention, not as comfort but as raw, undeniable power crashing through the chaos. You were no longer at the mercy of those seeking to tear you apart. The shield was not soft light or a fragile wall. It was an impenetrable barrier forged from the very substance of the universe's will, a surge of power so potent it warped the air around you. Nothing could pierce it. No blade of malice, no arrow of envy. Their words, once like shards of glass, now shattered harmlessly against the unseen force surrounding you. Those who sought to harm you felt their own hatred recoil, like waves breaking violently against the rocks, only to dissolve into nothingness. You were urged to see, not gently, but with an urgency that tore away the comforting lies you once clung to. Your eyes were pried open, forced to witness the truth in its rawest form. The masks people wore disintegrated before you, revealing their hollow hearts, their cowardice, and their fears masquerading as strength. God had not intervened to spare you from pain, but to carve through the illusions that kept you tethered to those who sought your destruction. Now you stood apart, untouched, a being apart from their pettiness, able to see through their fragile facades. The truth, once a storm you feared, was now a clear sky laid bare before you. It wasn't peace you were given, it was clarity. And in that clarity, you found the power to transcend. The truth came crashing down like a tidal wave, merciless and inescapable. God didn't whisper comfort to you, but ripped away the masks of those who walked beside you, forcing you to confront the treachery that had lingered just out of sight. You thought their smiles were genuine, their words sincere. Yet, in a blinding instant, the veil fell, and there they stood, familiar faces with knives hidden in their hands. The very people you believed would stand beside you in battle had been quietly orchestrating your downfall. These weren't strangers. They were the ones who shared your table, the ones who spoke words of support while their eyes flickered with something darker, something hungry. Their betrayal wasn't accidental or passive. It was deliberate, calculated. Each lie they fed you was a thread in a web spun to bind you in doubt and silence. Their smiles were a facade, and behind that mask of warmth lurked envy, resentment, fear, poisons they tried to pour into your veins. But it wasn't just the obvious faces. There were those in the shadows, distant figures you barely noticed. Yet they held the strings. They whispered in the ears of your closest ones, feeding the flames of betrayal. These hidden forces, the background actors in your personal tragedy, lent their support from the dark corners, guiding the hands of those who stood openly against you. Their roles were quiet but pivotal, ensuring that each attack was perfectly timed, that each blow struck when your defenses were down. Now you see them for what they are, layers upon layers of deception, woven so intricately that it took divine revelation to unravel it. What they thought was hidden has now been laid bare, and their betrayal, once festering in the dark, is exposed to the full light. The truth was never hidden, only obscured by the noise of petty minds and envious hearts. They didn't attack out of strength or righteousness, but from jealousy, a twisted form of admiration that soured into resentment. Their motives were small, their ambitions hollow. They longed to see you fall, not because they believed you undeserving of your place, but because they knew they could never reach your height. Each wound they inflicted was born of a desperation to drag you into the shadows where they resided, suffocating under the weight of their own mediocrity. They circled like vultures, waiting for your weakness, hoping to feast on your suffering. It wasn't enough for them to stand by as you struggled. They thrived on it, feeding off your pain as though it validated their own failings. Every whispered lie, every attempt to undermine you was a carefully crafted strike, not to destroy, but to diminish you, to make you question your own worth. They built their satisfaction on the fragile ruins of your struggles, mistaking your trials for their victory. But then the veil was torn away, not gently, but with the force of divine intervention. God didn't offer comfort or solace. He exposed the rotting core of their intentions, their jealousy, their pettiness, their ignorance. They were laid bare before you, undeniable and grotesque. What they sought to conceal in false smiles and feigned concern now stood naked, their motives bleeding out like a festering wound. You could see it all, their desperation, their insecurity, their thirst for your downfall. They had profited from your struggles, yes, but only because you had allowed their deception to flourish in the dark. Now, it's time to stand your ground, beloved chosen one. You've seen them, those who circled like vultures waiting for your downfall, hoping your struggle would validate their own emptiness. They built their false victories on the crumbling foundation of your trials, feeding off your pain as if it could fill the void in their souls. But now, the veil has been torn, not gently, but with the fury of divine judgment. Their jealousy, their lies, and their malice have been exposed. You were never meant to stay down. You were meant to rise, and rise you will, with the obsidian inner order, where we sharpen the blade of your spirit for the battles ahead. This is your moment to take back your power. They didn't suspect you would wield this spiritual trump card. Inside the obsidian inner order, you'll access uncensored truths, the kind of knowledge that the powers that be desperately try to keep from you. You will receive pre-release access to the Modern Manifestation Mechanics Grimoire for Chosen Ones, a guide to turning your struggles into stepping stones for your ascension. This isn't for those looking for comfort. It's for warriors ready to fortify their spirits and burn through the darkness. It's time to connect with the true chosen ones, those who will fight beside you and together reclaim the power that was always yours. The link is in the description on Patreon. Join us and step into the fullness of your destiny. God shattered the script they had written for you, the one where your failure was inevitable, where your defeat was to be their spectacle. They stood, expectant, eager to watch you crumble under the weight of their schemes. But they underestimated the hand that guides your fate. What they saw as your final chapter was nothing more than a plot twist in a story far beyond their control. God rewrote your narrative with such force that the very foundation of their plans collapsed. Their eyes were fixed on you, anticipating the moment when your strength would break, when your will would buckle, and they could feast on the remnants of your struggle. But the failure they longed to see never came. Instead, what they believed would be your downfall became the stage for your rise. Each attempt to wound you only sharpened your resilience, turning their weapons back upon them. They tried to profit from your pain, but their hands closed on nothing but dust as God's will swept their ambitions aside like leaves in a storm. You were never meant to fall by their hands, and their schemes were always destined to fail. What they didn't understand was that their attacks, their betrayal, were mere ingredients in a transformation they couldn't comprehend. God took their venom, their cruelty, and molded it into the very force that propelled you forward. While they were blinded by envy, you were being remade, your story redefined in ways they could never anticipate. As they stand in the wreckage of their own making, they realize too late that your path was never theirs to dictate. Their desire to see you fall was their downfall, while your success has been written not by the hands of men but by the hand of God, in lines they could never erase. The ones who once stood over you, casting shadows so dark they believed you'd never rise from beneath them, have been brought low. Their cruelty, once wielded like a weapon against you, has turned back upon them with a force they never anticipated. God didn't simply silence them, He stripped them bare, exposing their pride as nothing more than fragile armor. They are now left stumbling, their relentless need to crush you crumbling into ashes at their feet. The power they once held over you has disintegrated, leaving them hollow. Their arrogance, the fuel behind their attacks, has withered into shame. They see you now, not as the victim they once toyed with, but as someone beyond their reach, a figure who towers over the ruins of their pride. Jealousy clings to them like a sickness. Where they once took pleasure in your pain, they now choke on the bitter taste of their own failure. They long for the days when they could control the narrative, but the truth is undeniable. They were never your masters, and their triumph was always temporary. Some of them, desperate to reclaim the power they lost, will try to find their way back into your life. They will approach with outstretched hands, seeking to use you as the glue that holds their fractured egos together. But they have miscalculated. You are no longer the support structure for their brokenness. The weight they once placed on you has been lifted, and you stand unbound by their expectations or their needs. They are nothing more than echoes of a past that no longer has any claim over you. Their regret is a prison they cannot escape, while you walk free, unburdened and untouched. They have been humiliated, and the roles have reversed. Now they are the ones trapped beneath the weight of their own failures. You are urged to release them, the ones who once tore at your spirit with cold indifference, who vanished when you needed them most. Their absence was a void, an abyss you were forced to confront alone. But it was in that isolation that your strength was forged. You clawed your way through the darkness without their hands, and now, having emerged on the other side, you are untouchable in ways they cannot comprehend. Their betrayal was not your defeat. It was the fire that tempered you. The path you walked was jagged, a brutal ascent that left scars on your soul. But those wounds became your armor. Without their hollow promises, without their false presence, you found yourself standing alone in a place they could never reach. Now they look upon you, not with the contempt they once held, but with envy and regret, longing to return to the space they once occupied. But they have no right to walk beside you now, not after they abandoned you at your lowest. They seek to return, to bask in the light of your triumph, but they are strangers now. The bond that once tethered you to them has frayed, unraveling with every step you took forward. You are not their sanctuary, not their redemption. They forfeited their place when they turned their backs on you, when their absence echoed louder than any words of support could have. They do not deserve to reap the rewards of your perseverance, for they did not share in the trials that shaped it. Letting go is not a gesture of weakness. It is a declaration of your strength. You have already moved forward without them, and the weight of their presence no longer clings to your soul. Release them and walk on, unburdened by those who once sought to hinder your rise. God's justice has descended upon those who wronged you, not gently, but with the weight of a storm they never saw coming. Their arrogance, once towering over you like a mountain, has crumbled into dust beneath the force of divine reckoning. What they inflicted upon you in their cruelty now pales in comparison to the humiliation they themselves are forced to endure. They built their pride on your pain, believing themselves untouchable, but the collapse was inevitable. God's hand, unseen yet unmistakable, swept through their lives, reducing their schemes to ruin. You were never left to navigate that storm alone. Even as their attacks rained down on you, God shielded you, turning what they meant for destruction into your strength. Each blow meant to break you only reinforced your resilience. Every insult a lesson that sharpened your resolve. They believed they held power over you, but that power was always fleeting, an illusion quickly undone by the one who truly governs all things. As they falter, lost in the chaos of their own making, you stand untouched, having been guided through the very tempest they set upon you. God didn't just defend you, He transformed your path, using their malice to fortify your purpose. Every time they sought to tear you down, He lifted you higher, making their efforts futile. The humiliation they experience now is not merely punishment, but the natural consequence of their own actions, magnified by the divine forces they failed to comprehend. Their downfall is greater than anything you could have imagined, because it is the inevitable result of their own choices, magnified in the reflection of their failures. You have emerged from the storm, not only intact but exalted. They are left to reckon with the destruction they wrought upon themselves, while you continue forward, vindicated and unshaken by the trials they once unleashed upon you. You cannot drag the blind into the light, no matter how brightly the truth blazes before them. Their ignorance is not a failure of your own, but a choice they cling to, a veil they refuse to lift. You are not responsible for their blindness, nor can you waste your strength trying to pry open eyes that will never see. God has shown you the truth, carved it into the fabric of your existence, and now you must leave them behind in the darkness they've chosen. Their opinions are fleeting, fragile things, like brittle leaves crumbling in your hand. You cannot tether yourself to the judgments of those who refuse to see beyond their own smallness. What they think of you, what they whisper in corners, holds no weight in the face of divine truth. You are called to value the path God has laid out for you, to honor the sacred strength within yourself, more than the empty words of those too fearful to grow. They will try to pull you down to their level, to trap you in their limited vision, but you must rise beyond it. It is time for you to ascend, to outgrow the childish games they play in the shadows. They are stuck in their small, petty ways, chasing fleeting validation, trapped in a cycle of superficiality and spite. But you have outgrown that world. God has called you to a higher place, one that requires maturity, wisdom, and strength. You cannot remain among those who refuse to evolve, who cling to their insecurities, and refuse to confront the truth. Your growth demands that you shed the weight of their opinions and rise to where you are meant to be. Let them remain in their illusions while you move forward, unshackled and unhindered, bound only to the truth and to God. To the younger among you, know this: the world will try to drown you in noise, to blur the edges of who you are until you no longer recognize your own reflection. Voices will surround you, pulling at you with shallow promises, each one insisting that you must mold yourself to fit their image. But you are not meant to be shaped by their hands. The truth of who you are is not found in their words or their approval. It is within you, deeper than their shallow judgments can ever reach. The world will tempt you to drift, to lose focus, to chase fleeting pleasures that scatter like ash in the wind. But without a plan, without purpose, you are nothing more than a leaf caught in a storm, tossed wherever the winds of the moment decide. Develop your plan, sharpen your vision, and fix your eyes on the path laid out before you. The distractions are endless, each one designed to pull you off course, to devour your time and energy, leaving you empty-handed. But you were made for more than wandering aimlessly through a maze of others' expectations. Others will attempt to lead you astray, to pull you into their chaos, because they cannot bear to walk the path alone. Their lives may be louder, more chaotic, but do not mistake that noise for meaning. Their distractions are not your burden to carry. Stay firm in your purpose. Your life is not to be wasted on the fleeting whims of those who have no plan of their own. You must know yourself, hold fast to your vision, and remain focused. Let the world swirl around you, but you stand anchored, unshaken, walking the path you were always meant to follow. You are the master of your destiny, and no one can steer you off course unless you let them. You are no longer bound by that walk of shame, no longer shackled to the weight of others' judgments. What once dragged you down, what once crushed you beneath the eyes of those who sought to see you fall, has been shattered. God has stood with you, unwavering, lifting you from the depths of their scorn and guiding you through the darkest storms. You have not merely survived, you have emerged victorious, untouched by the pettiness and cruelty of those who thought they could break you. Now you stand in the light of your strength. The protection that shielded you, the divine hand that pulled you from the depths, is a reminder of who you are and what you have overcome. You no longer bow your head to the weight of their expectations, their ridicule, or their jealousy. You move forward, your head held high, unshakable, no longer defined by the shadows they tried to cast over you. This victory is not just yours to carry in silence. Your strength, your journey, is a testament to those who still walk beneath the weight of judgment, unsure of their own power. Share your story. Let your voice break through the silence. Let others know that they too can rise, that they are not alone. What you've gained is more than protection. It's the power to inspire. Stand tall and let your story be the light that guides others out of their own storms. The time to be silent is over.